This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, from Philadelphia to Erie and from Pittsburgh to Scranton, it's Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenawalt, Senior Fellow with the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and I'm joined, as usual, by my co-host, Maura Donnelly. Maura, hi.
Hello, Charlie.
Why, it's that time of year when baseball season is winding up and football season is winding up.
Yeah.
How are your teams from Pittsburgh looking?
The Pirates, not so good. And then the Steelers remains to be seen. We'll see. We'll see.
There's a lot of drama in the city of brotherly love,
Yes,
too. What
yes.
will happen with those two teams?
Yes, there is.
But I wanted to take a second today to show our audience a brand new book authored by James Broussard. It's called Anatomy of an Upset and the Birth of a Two-Party State, the Election of John Tower to the U.S. Senate from Texas in 1961. This book has been worked on by Dr. Broussard for his whole career, and it's just been published by the University of Texas Press, and I would recommend it to anyone who's looking for an understanding of modern-day politics, particularly modern-day politics in the South. So I just wanted to, this is a wonderful read, and it was actually finished by his child and by his brother after he passed, so it's quite a testimony. And I recommend it highly. But
great.
Someone else I recommend highly is our guest today, and that's Ken Mash. Ken is the president of APSCUF and one of the leaders of education in Pennsylvania, particularly higher education. There are very few people who know more than Ken does. And we are at the time of year when we're going back to school and getting ready for a new year in the secondary level, of course, and at the college level as well. And wondered if Ken could come, and he was gracious enough to grace us with his presence. Ken, there are some people who are tuning in for the first time. There are other people that might be a little bit rusty. You have been a familiar face on our show and done a wonderful job in explaining Pennsylvania higher education. But could you sort of give us a new tutorial on what is APSCUF, the organization that you lead?
Thanks, Charlie. First, it's great to be here. It's great to see both of you again, Charlie and Maura. So APSCUF stands for the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties. We're a labor union, and we represent the faculty and coaches at the 10 publicly owned universities in Pennsylvania. So all the faculty, and we also represent all the coaches at those universities too. So we are very much involved, in negotiating contracts, of course, for our members, but we're also involved in trying to get policy that favors our students. And we're very proud of what we do because we serve the working class in Pennsylvania. We really are the institutions that provide the basis for upward mobility for thousands and thousands of Pennsylvanians each year, and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands over the years.
Well, typically by this time of year, there would be a lot of certainty in tuition rates because the budget would have passed. So how is the impasse right now in the budget impacting APSCUF?
Yeah, so, it's a matter of impacting not just APSCUF, but all our institutions entirely, because the governor had proposed that there'd be a 6.5% increase for our budgets, which we really needed. That number was actually designed so that we could go, a record like 9th straight year without having a tuition increase. However, we don't have a budget yet, and the state system at the beginning of the year, because they're sort of caught between a rock and a hard place, saying, we don't know what our budget's going to be yet, but we need to have some money. They raised tuition a little bit, right? And said, look, we'll even give that back to the students should we get the 6.5% increase that the governor had been for. But in the meanwhile, in Harrisburg, it's been, a lot of talking by individual people, but not a lot of meeting in the chambers about trying to get a budget passed. So here we are in September, or heading towards September, and we don't know when there'll be a budget.
What does this whole situation possibly mean for students' tuition in the upcoming year, Ken?
Yeah, so I think for this year we're set. We had that little tuition increase. Of course, that leaves a pretty big hole in our budget, and we're talking, it may not seem like a lot to people, or people might be thinking, okay, maybe you'll be flat funded. You won't be cut, you'll get the same amount. But we're living through times where, health care costs are going up 15 or more percent each year. Our salaries, to be honest, are going up, right? So there's increased costs, and we have to be able to live with those costs. If we're flat funded, none of those increases are going to be accounted for. The tuition increase made up for just a tiny bit of it, but I think we're going to wind up with something like a $14 million hole in our budget, and already we've been through years of minimal state increases, so we're already pretty much at bare bones to begin with. So that not having that money is really going to hurt. It's going to hurt.
How's it looking for getting the 6.5? I know there's been two sides debating a lot of different issues. This is one of them. How's it looking for the 6.5 that the governor proposed?
We're still hopeful that we'll get that 6.5. It's a negotiations process, and unfortunately, I think they would be much better off if I was in the room negotiating. I don't get to be in the room when they're negotiating, so I'm hoping that they'll come up with a reasonable solution that will take care of all the interests involved, as SEPTA.
Right. I was going to say there are a few sticking points that don't have anything to do with you, so you have to sit and watch.
Yeah, we have to watch that, and we'll see what's going to happen. We're not overly optimistic, but we're not totally pessimistic at this point. But regardless, I think that we have to be prepared in the future to be continuing to make the case for our students, for our institutions, and for higher education and the importance of higher education, something that's really taken a pretty big hit in the previous couple of years.
Speaking of higher education, when we look across the landscape from Maine to California, how are things in higher education nationally, Ken?
Well, I think it's not a happy tale of what's going on in higher education, because we've had these cuts on the national level to all kinds of research programs that are being done, and that's really going to impact people's lives, in the future, because it means that we're not engaging in the research that could lead to discovery for diseases in the future. It's the kind of thing where you don't feel it necessarily right now, but you're going to feel it long term. And it's just really a bad situation. And on top of that, we have cuts to all kinds of grant programs and things of that sort that are ultimately going to keep keep students from being able to afford to go to college if they don't have the student loans that they need. And when that happens, we're not going to have the workforce, because all the data says we're going to need many more people with college degrees or at least some certificate to be successful in Pennsylvania. But we're not going to have that if we continue down this road. Now, I think the good news is I think it's been a real wake-up call for higher ed all across the country, and I think we're beginning to work together more than ever before to try and make that case. And I look forward to, in this year, us coming together and being able to push back, and by, number one, making the case for higher ed. We've been sort of listening to other people talk about it, but not really, we haven't really been on the platforms talking about the fact that higher education is a public good. It serves everyone. For example, at our institutions, if Clarion University goes away, that's not just bad for the students. It's not just bad for the Commonwealth in this more abstract sense of not having jobs. That means an entire community is going to be devastated. And we could talk about that for multiple campuses in our state system. And that's just our part of higher education in Pennsylvania.
So there's a little bit of a silver lining that everybody is joining forces to work on these issues.
I think so. I think every once in a while, there's a clarion call, and you have to answer that call, and you have to stand up, because if you don't stand up and you don't defend these things, which are important, then you are just going to get pushed over. And I think people are starting to really answer that call.
Well, what does all this mean, Ken, for the Pennsylvania Promise that APSCUF has supported for several years, at least since 2018?
Right. So the Pennsylvania Promise is a program that would say that the state, in essence, would cover the tuition portion of students' bills for, I think if you make, at this point in the latest version, if your family makes less than $200,000 a year, it would pick up that cost. What does it mean? Yeah, it makes it harder because there's less money that's available from lots of different ways in the Commonwealth because of cuts at the federal level. But at the same time, right, if those people who are, pushing forward and have different ideas, if they don't put those ideas out there, if they don't say, hey, this is an alternative, this is a different way we can go, then nobody's going to know about it. They're just going to think the status quo is the way to go, or that's the only alternative that's out there is the one that's being presented right now. So I think that there has to be, from all parties, always looking for new and imaginative ways to make the average citizen's life better. And I think Pennsylvania Promise is part of that, and we are going to continue to fight for it. I hope that the members of the legislature increasingly support it, and if not, maybe their challengers will support it.
It does look like there's renewed interest in it this year. Hasn't there been some legislation introduced? And
yeah, so the actual legislation hasn't been introduced yet, but there was a memo.
They're working
more
on it.
familiar with what that means,
Yes.
but there's been a memo that's out there. So we're expecting the legislation will again come out, and we will again be pushing for supporters, including, we want the governor to come out and say, I support this, too.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that would be perfect for us.
Well, it's interesting you should mention the governor, because as a multi-term president of APSCUF, you've dealt with several governors. And I just wondered if you could give our audience some idea of which governors seem to have supported education and most seem to have accomplished the most in terms of education for the Commonwealth, Ken?
Yeah, I think, when it comes to governors, right, it's a matter of, it's good to be able to get along with them personally, but it's always what do you do in the end that matters. And we've had experience with, dating back to the 80s, APSCUF has supported Republican governors and Democratic governors. So we've had pretty good relationships with governors. I would say that, as far as being able to go in and really discuss policy and things like that, Tom Wolf was very, he was MIT graduate, so we could talk, and we could talk in terms that we felt like, oh, we're talking to a partner here.
Well, the legislature is still working on the budget, coming back in September, I understand. What's the first thing APSCUF's going to do when they return? Knock on their doors?
When they get back, unfortunately, like most people, like I said before, we all wish we were in the room, and I'm sure you have many friends or whatever who wish that they could be, but really,
I was once, but that's a whole nother story.
So, the time for lobbying is, you can tell your clients whatever you want, but the time for lobbying is pretty much over.
Yeah.
And we're really just hoping that people stick to their guns and get what they want. But I think the more important thing is not what happens this year, but how do we react, and how do we, if we get what we need, that's great. Where do we go from there? How do we show that we're worth that money? If we don't get that money, how do we immediately get to work to get the kind of funding that we need to be able to support working class Pennsylvanians?
Because the 2026 budget is not too far away, right?
Indeed.
Yeah.
It's going to
Because
start
we're
very
running a little
soon.
bit late, yeah.
Right.
Hold on, we'll be back with another segment of Behind the Headlines right after this. Stay
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, the largest, most influential municipal association in the Commonwealth. Since 1921, PSATS has been preserving and strengthening township government and securing greater visibility and involvement for townships in the state and federal political arenas. Covering 95% of Pennsylvania's land mass, townships represent 5.5 million residents, more than any other type of political subdivision in Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation. and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Visit pahighwayinfo.org.
Welcome back to Behind the Headlines. On this segment of Behind the Headlines, Maura and I are joined by Robert Fulton, who is the coach executive leader of APSCUF. We've just talked to Ken Mash, the president of APSCUF, for the last half of the show. And now we would like to come over to your side. As the coach executive leader of APSCUF, could you tell the audience and tell us a little bit about what's your role in APSCUF?
Well, I do think the professors, faculty on our campuses, and then the coaches, our roles are, we're all working for the same cause, but our roles are quite a bit different. The coach's life, day in and day out and year to year, certainly is unique. And so really I'm in place to support all of the coaches, to be a liaison for our coaches at our legislative assembly and our contract negotiations, and just to fight for coaches' ability to be able to do our jobs, to be able to feel some security in doing our jobs, just because I think it is a difficult position at times, but certainly a very influential one in the lives of our student athletes.
But you're also a coach, so give us a little bit about your background. What brought you here to this role, and what do you coach?
So I am the head women's soccer coach at Shippensburg University. I am in my 21st year. I came from New Mexico College of the Southwest, which is a small NAIA school, private school in Hobbs, New Mexico. So I was the head women's coach there for a couple of years, and then came east. My wife is from this area, so that's where and I honestly thought I would probably be at SHIP for a couple of years and then move on. That's kind of the life of a coach, but ended up just staying and have enjoyed being at SHIP, and then a member of APSCUF, and now in a leadership position to really help support our coaches.
There are lots of perceptions of student athletes in the general public. Could you tell us a little bit about the perceptions that are out there on student athletes and how they actually compare academically to the general student body? Because there's all kinds of perhaps misinformation and misperceptions out there.
Yeah, I do think that, and again, we're at the NCAA Division II level, and so I do think there's this perception sometimes that student athletes get all of these benefits and all of these luxuries and all of these things that other students are, not privy to. But in reality, unless you're at the highest levels of Division I athletics per se, really the student athletes on every one of our campuses are young men and women who are really adding a lot to the university as far as not only their sport, leadership positions, other contributing community service, investing in the university, probably more than a lot of students who might just be in our general population. It's very time consuming to be a student athlete, balancing the academics with your sport and the demands of that sport, which vary from place to place. And academically, I think what you would find, and I think at SHIP, certainly our student athletes year to year achieve at a higher academic rate than our general student population, and I'm sure that would be the case at every one of the institutions. So not only do we have great students who are achieving at a really high level, but they also are, the demands on their time and sacrifices that they have to make to do this is quite high as well. So I think all of the coaches certainly take a great pride in that.
What do you attribute the fact that they excel in academics to? Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, what causes that?
Yeah, I certainly
'Cause
think
it's an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, I certainly think that our student athletes have been
Good time management.
great time management and have come up through
Important.
Yes, absolutely.
have come up through a system where they're playing high-level athletics, involved in club teams, high school teams, and have to manage their time and learn those things, and certainly are high achievers when they get to us.
Okay.
And so I do think there's
That makes sense,
a
yeah.
background of high achieving, and that kind of carries over. And certainly, like on my team at Shippensburg University, we just have a wealth of young women who are, going on to be teachers, doctors, lawyers. I mean, working in government positions and social workers, and there just so many fantastic
Goal-oriented.
benefits. Yeah, very much
Yeah.
goal-oriented,
Yeah.
and certainly the ability to go through, manage your time, and get out and do great things upon graduation, for sure.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, few of our students will go on and compete at the professional level because there just aren't
Yeah.
that many professional jobs that are available. With that in mind, what are the benefits or the reasons why students would compete at the collegiate level if they know they're not going to be able to be a pro or compete at that level?
I think probably for most of the student athletes, it probably comes down to the opportunity to compete at the highest level in your sport for most likely for 98% of them the last time at a very competitive level in their life. They've been involved in these sports all the way from youth sports into high school sports and then on. But as you said, very few of our student athletes are going to go on and compete professionally. So I think that probably is the realization, like, hey, this is our last 4 years to do this, and it also provides them the ability to be a part of a group, a team environment, make lifelong friends, and share it with fellow students that have the same interests as well.
Well, we hear a lot in collegiate athletics these days about the transfer portal, the transfer window.
What is that?
And can you tell us what it is and what are some of the challenges that it brings to collegiate sports here, even in Pennsylvania?
The face of college athletics has really changed and is currently changing year to year, and is really going through a big transformation over the last 5 years. The transfer portal certainly was, at the advent, I did not think it would affect me, but it certainly has, and it literally gives the ability for student athletes to get in the portal at several different times every year if they want to leave the school for any reason, and to kind of, in essence, become a free agent. They can jump in there and they can shop around and they can see if there's a better opportunity, or and that's just I think coaches have mixed feelings because it presents a whole lot of challenges for coaches who are trying to build sustained rosters that are consistent, and it's a difficult thing, and it certainly also is taking opportunities away from high school age kids, seniors to be, juniors to be, because with thousands of student athletes in the portal every year in all of these sports, well, then some coaches can just, bring in players with more experience who are a little bit older, and that then takes opportunities away from high school kids because those spots are being filled by. Right. So there are some, I think coaches have some real mixed feelings about the portal because it definitely presents some big challenges.
For you and for the student.
Yes, yes.
They may lose some credits and...
Yeah, and unfortunately, some are not educated and they will jump in the portal and then not be able to return to their... Yes, yeah. So it's hard, yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. So tell us what some of the biggest challenges are that you're going to be facing, you think, as APSCUF coming up, or Ken talked a lot about the budget. Are you keeping an eye on that? What's your role in all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think Ken touched on the budget, and that is a direct effect on athletic departments across our schools, across the system here, is that, decreased enrollment, higher costs. Certainly our athletic department budget at SHIP has been drastically reduced since I arrived on campus 21 years ago. And so that is, coaches are being asked to do more with less, I believe, across the system, to be more creative. And so it does present challenges because roster numbers are not going down. So if you're asking coaches to do more with less, but they want roster
Still the
numbers
same
to
number
be
of
high,
kids,
then that's a big challenge for coaches, and it just makes the job more difficult. So certainly the things that affect our faculty also affect the coaches in a direct way, for sure.
If you had only 30 seconds to tell our audience what the day of a college coach looks like, what would you say? How would you portray it?
Well, it changes depending on what time of year you're in, but I would just want people to know that the day in the life of a coach is it's all year long. There is never a break. You're always either coaching a season, you're always either recruiting or fundraising or managing your team or doing different things, and it happens over the holidays, it happens over the summer. It is all the time and 24/7, since we are in contact with our student athletes all the time as well. So.
Okay. Well, we want to thank you for being with us
I
today.
just want to say I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk about what a great job our coaches and student athletes are doing.
It was great to learn from you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, Rob, we appreciate having you and
Appreciate
having Ken
that.
before you, and we hope we'll have you again on the screen next week and for another episode of Behind the Headlines. We'll see you then.